Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our co-hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Sri and Peter. Welcome again to the CPG Guys podcast. I'm PVSB. When I'm not podcasting, I run business-to-business engagement strategy at Fetch Rewards, mobile loyalty platform. As per usual, I'm joined by my co-host and my very dear friend, Sri. Sri, welcome back to the CPG Guys Clubhouse. How you doing?
Doing awesome, Peter. How are you? I know both of us got a bout of flu this week, but good news, we're back on our feet and running here. And I'm actually at Austin, going to see my daughter perform for the third time at South by Southwest tomorrow. But Peter, we can't say Clubhouse. We got to say Spaces.
Okay, Spaces. That's
the
fine.
Actions in Twitter Spaces. No more Clubhouse.
No more Clubhouse. It's fine. You know why? Because this club's open to everyone. There's nothing exclusive about this. We are an educational podcast. We want everybody to come along for the journey. So fair enough. And Sri, lest I forget, you and I are champing at the bit for baseball season to get underway. So excited that the billionaires and the multimillionaires all agreed on a collective bargaining agreement, so we can get back to America's pastime, which is not football, by the way, people. It is baseball. But thank you, Sri.
No debate there. But my goal of the day today, Peter, we got to get Molly to smile at our quirky humor. Chris,
I know.
He knows.
Yeah, Chris has given us a good laugh. Molly's like, oh, these guys. Okay, good enough. But listen. Thank you for that, Sri. Before we get to our guests, I'll remind our audience that all of our content can be found by just visiting cpgguys.com. And if you aren't already following us on LinkedIn, open up the mobile app, because that's what like 90% of you do to get to LinkedIn. And in the search box, enter CPG Guys. When you get to our page, just simply click follow. That way, you'll get to see all the content we're producing. You'll be privy to all of it. And the best thing about it, Sri, it's totally free. We don't charge anything for it. Isn't that crazy? Like, we're not monetizing this. This is nutty. In any event, remember to check out also the FMCG Guys podcast hosted by our friends Daniel and Efrain. They're taking the CPG Guys podcast format across the pond and speaking to retail and FMCG luminaries from a European perspective. Just visit fmcgguys.com. And of course, we're incredibly proud to partner with Next Up, formerly known as Network of Executive Women, whose mission it is to advance all women in business and to promote the cause of gender equality and career development. Please visit nextupisnow.org to learn more about this very noble group. In the digital age, manufacturers have more opportunities to control their commerce destiny than ever before. Taking advantage of those opportunities requires new strategies, agile operations, new partnerships, and continuous improvement in every channel, both online and off. A few people at Salsify decided to create a separate community to bring an ecosystem of experience together to share ideas, outcomes, and the strategies that will drive revenue in the years ahead. So was born the Digital Shelf Institute. I'm proud to be a member of the DSI's Executive Forum. You may also be familiar with the DSI's podcast, Unpacking the Digital Shelf, hosted by our dear friends, Peter Crosby and Rob Gonzalez. If you don't already subscribe to it, just go to cpgguys.com, click on the link of our favorite podcast, and you can find it right there at the top. So joining us for today's episode to share with us two complementary pieces of highly interesting research about digital and e-commerce transformation and change management are Molly Schonthal Hamlin, Executive Director of the DSI, as well as Chris Perry, a fellow member of the DSI Executive Forum and Chief Learning Officer and co-founder of Firstmovr, a satellite center of excellence for CPG e-commerce education. Molly, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having us. And I will get to the point where I appreciate your humor. I'm usually the quirky one, so you have to give me, a couple moments to adjust.
And thank you so much, Peter and Sri, for having me and Molly. We're so excited to be here. And I'm so glad to share my quirky humor with you so that she's not just pointing and laughing at me.
I already know Chris's.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chris, we're quite familiar with your sense of humor, and we love it. So, Molly, before we get to the questions Sri and I have prepared for our conversation, would you let our audience know where on the web they can learn more about DSI, and would you give us a brief introduction to your organization?
Absolutely. So it is at the digitalshelfinstitute.org. We created this group institute as separate from Salsify because e-commerce is a really lonely place. I don't know if you've recognized, we all feel a little crazy. We all feel like the things that we're seeing and hearing maybe are coming through just our eyes or ours and other practitioners' eyes. And so this institute was formed as a gathering place of digital shelf executives and entrepreneurs who are looking for other like-minded people to share ideas, discovery, pain, just reach out when they're having a hard day. So our goal is really to find the 3 people you can call on any topic and build a terrific community because things are changing so quickly. None of us know it all. It takes a village.
Thanks for that, Molly. Chris, why don't you tell us where people can find Firstmovr online and give us a little bit of detail about what your business is about?
Yes, so I'm obviously very excited to be a part of the DSI community, and there can never be enough community, both for therapy purposes, but also for advancement of ourselves and our organizations. In that same vein, I helped co-found about 2 years ago a community and an initiative, an organization called Firstmovr. You can find out more about us at firstmovr.com. And there's no E in Firstmovr because there's really no E in e-commerce as we're quickly becoming commerce. But we are, as Peter introduced, a satellite center of excellence for CPG e-commerce education. We do industry events that are free to brands to attend, so you can learn more about those on our website. We focus in on very actionable education on Amazon, how to win on Instacart, how to win on Kroger, how to win in the Bev Out category. We do slices of different things to get a little closer to the next level strategy. And then we also do a lot of custom trainings and advisory to help fellow first movers out there. So we'd love to have you join all of these communities because there's never enough love to go around. So,
Chris, I noticed that one of your clients recently leveraged Credly to start badging their employees who've gone through training programs through Firstmovr to indicate that they are certified in that particular training. I think that's a brilliant way to help assure the industry that they are quite experienced in actually this discipline that they have undertaken. So thank you. What I'm going to do with both of you is I'm going to put hyperlinks in the digital liner notes of this podcast to your companies, your LinkedIn pages, your company's LinkedIn pages, and of course the research that you'll be talking about today, so that for people listening along, no need to write anything down. 90+% of you are using your mobile app to listen to this. Just open up the episode, look at the digital liner notes, and click the hyperlinks. Can't be much easier than that. All right, so Molly and Chris, I know.
Thanks for taking the friction out of that purchase.
Absolutely. Well, we try to be. But Molly and Chris, I know you've partnered together today through the DSI community to lead and publish a research report last year entitled Total Growth Accountability, which outlines some of the behaviors holding brands back from unlocking e-commerce growth and the new behaviors we need to start leveraging to win. So I'm going to kick this off with the first question. And this is, I guess, to both of you. I know you've partnered together through the DSI community to lead and publish a research report that I mentioned, Total Growth Accountability. Can you tell us more about the premise and what inspired your research?
Sure. So Chris and I, and Chris, feel free to jump in, have partnered a couple times. And what usually starts a partnership is we are asked the same questions over and over and over again by our peers and e-commerce practitioners. And one of the questions we notice being asked is, how do companies who succeed in growing in digital commerce or drop the e-commerce or omnichannel commerce, how do they do it? How do they organize? How do they measure? And as Chris and I were thinking about it, we thought, there's that aspect of how they do it. But there's also this aspect of what they're not doing or choosing not to do that's important. So much of this is about culture practice and legacy organizations getting in the way of future thinking. And so that's where we started. That's where we started thinking about total growth accountability. How do we create the language to describe what should be done to accelerate in this space? And how do we create the language to describe what's holding people back?
Wow. So the interesting thing here is I've been down this journey myself for 6 years as one of the early, no pun intended, first movers in e-commerce. But before we move this forward, first let me welcome a personal friend and somebody I've done consulting projects and work with. And I actually remember, Chris, when you were still ideating Firstmovr at the beginning of the pandemic back in March or April 2020. So I want to congratulate you on all the success of Firstmovr. My personal favorite output that I just saw 30 days ago was the book with the sheep. I won't give away details. I won't give away what that means. We're going to create some curiosity here. Y'all want to know what it is, jump onto firstmovr.com. It's going to be in the digital liner notes of this podcast and check out what it is. And Molly, welcome to you as well. I love the way you introduced the DSI as e-commerce is a lonely place. Hell yeah. And I felt that way for many years when I first started. And the DSI did provide a great source of support, strength, moral support, call it what you may, to really move the needle forward. I'll tell you where we were 2 years ago versus where we are now post-pandemic as a e-commerce CPG community. A lot has moved. The business has grown significantly across the board for everybody, but it's still bizarre that people ask these questions because I get a lot of them. We get a lot of them on this show. So my question for you, Chris, is what the heck is this word that we just kind of debated here called total growth accountability, and is it important?
So that, and to be fair, we came up with these 3 words to capture what we were trying to solve for with all these questions Molly shared that were coming in. And a lot of us have this like gut instinct of the answer, especially those leading digital transformation or e-commerce, because it slapped you in the face. You could not understand it. But whether we could articulate it, get everyone else to come over the change curve with us, help them understand why they might be a barrier or what was holding them back. That was one of the challenges we know a lot of our peers are facing still today in 2022. But and this is going to sound so basic that it almost doesn't feel like it's worth research, but that's what I've always found is the brilliant basics are worthy of books, which is why very smart people write them. It's total growth accountability is this concept and approach of approaching growth as a holistic team with holistic connected metrics that hold us all accountable to one type of growth. Now, what I mean by that, and we can dig into this a little bit, is the fact that, and I remember I started in brand and then I volunteered as tribute into e-commerce and then it became sales, but I also had marketing still. So I kind of got to like ride 2 horses, but like I saw a world where like brand was measured on growth on a different timetable from sales, who was measured on a very short-term timetable. And then that, even though they're technically measured on growth, it's not the same kind of growth and their metrics weren't the same. So you were like multiple degrees away from Kevin Bacon and different from one another, even though everyone was trying to get to Kevin Bacon, but they didn't really know it. And then you even had senior or executive board level leadership who have a totally different set of metrics because they're reporting to Wall Street or to their private, ownership, so at the end of the day, growth sounds the same if we only use that word, but we really all need to be tied to the same growth and then complementary metrics that go along with whatever our company's purpose or mission is beyond money alone. And then back in so everyone's kind of marching to the beat of the same drum. And my last comment with that, Molly and I've talked about this a lot, it's kind of like saying, let's all go north. And then we all some of us end up in Alaska, some in Canada, and some in Iceland, right? That's not what we meant. We meant the North Pole, but we didn't say that was where we were going to end up. And we didn't measure everyone to recalibrate them to the North Pole. We just walked north. So you got to get everyone kind of really going to that same set of coordinates, which we may still not even know today, but we know it's got to be together walking north, not separate north-oriented growth goals. So that's that was what brought about this idea of total growth accountability.
How I interpret that, Chris, is, between brands, functions, there's going to be a lot of pluses, minuses. There's going to be reasons why one is a plus, one's a minus. But holistically, at the enterprise level, the decisions must always be made that the enterprise level always win. And it's all these actions always result in the greatest good for the enterprise. Is that fair?
So, Molly, I would love your take on what were the realities that really drove this need for total growth accountability.
So I'm going to speak about some of the practices that Chris and I noticed, and we talked to about 15 brand leaders. These are the practices we noticed that they had in common if we consider them leaders or entrepreneurs in this space of total growth accountability. And then as we continue the conversation, we'll get into some of the specifics. So the first is this idea of price matching proactivity, making assumptions about what will happen with your price ahead of time so that you can prevent yourself from being in a reactive mode. And I think Chris is going to unpack that for us later. The second is what we're calling dynamic portfolio management. So unlike traditional portfolio management, where you are taking months to determine your portfolio and it is locked in sort of indefinitely, you are taking things out and putting things in and matching them together at the same speed that the marketplace conditions are changing. The omni-channel marketplace conditions are changing, that you have agility in that way. The third practice we saw in common, and this is going to be, again, like, Chris says, the basics or Captain Obvious land, is the integration of sales and marketing. And I can speak more specifically about what aspects need to be integrated. And then finally, this idea of budget fluidity. You would be surprised or not how often we get into conversations about practices that need to be changed to be successful in an omni world. And what is holding an organization up is that the budget required to make these moves is coming from different organizations, is coming partially from shopper marketing, partially from the Walmart account, partially from a national media team, and partially from a creative team, and they can't get out of their own way to coordinate a series of investments that either rise and fall based on a set of conditions in the omni space. So once again, those things we, created in CPG land to keep ourselves stable, repeatable, and reliable are now getting in our way as we transition into new shopping modalities.
That's the key word, Molly. The 30, 40, 50, 5 decades of stability that the CPG industry established with best practices, functions, process, procedure, digital appended all of it. And unfortunately, look at the word that I just used, right? I think for most senior leaders in the industry, we saw it as appending something we know pretty well, whereas it needs to be accretive and it needs to be greater good for the enterprise, as Chris has already said right at the top of the show. And I think when we move away from appending to absorbing, I think this will be a whole lot better place. And if there's no greater call to action than now the bus is leaving, that bus is leaving pretty fast. And if you ain't hopping on it, it's, in my eyes, it's like game over on that piece. So you spoke about this. We kind of concur on both your thoughts. But what are the best practices you learned out of these interviews for shifting to this TGA or total growth accountability? And Chris, if you're okay with it, I'm going to say TGA go forward.
No, that's great, because otherwise we don't want to throw more acronyms at you like you don't already have enough in the industry. But if you,
I love it though, man. TGA, like I'm going to use
TGA.
that Monday morning.
It makes me think TGIF, which also would be cool if we could get Family Matters back on the air. I like a little Steve Urkel.
Or like TGI Fridays, which is Friday, and we're
like
yeah, a little bit of both.
Did I do that?
Don't go there because it's Friday now and I'm waiting to go eat something, get an ice cream, and I'm in Austin on top of that. So it's going to be beverages.
So as Molly talked about those best practices, we unpacked these, and obviously it's easy to say integrate sales and marketing or price matching proactivity, but there's like real best practices and micro levers that some brands out there are doing, I would say, maybe unbeknownst to them, and suddenly they're successful, but they don't know why. There are definitely a lot of challenger brands that we talk to who do this like in their sleep, and this is just how they designed around a route to market that was really critical for them to go to market nationally, even in many cases. So I always like to look at challenger brands personally, not because we can all be them overnight, but because they do design back from the route everyone else wants to win with. So then you could take their best practices and look how you would scale it without inhibiting it. But the first two that Molly talked about are actually very connected for a number of reasons. So we know pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailer. That's period, legally, doesn't matter what market you're in. That's not a point of contention. But what if the retailer wasn't human anymore? What if they are an algorithm that auto matches everything they see with the eye of Mordor, right? Which they do now. So in a world where you're one click away from every retailer, as a shopper, as a brand, everything's transparent. And we all know that really well. And we've all suffered and cried because of the margin erosion and the brand, the consumer equity and perception issues of pricing being all over the marketplace and the channel conflict and the relationship issues. But what's so funny though, is it's almost like, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing, but expecting different results. We just keep throwing our stuff out everywhere and then wondering why we keep suffering from the same problems. And then when you come back to a leader or an organization with recommendations on how you'd solve this, it's blasphemy to think that we would change the way we know works from a promotion standpoint in store because of the bleed over and the conflict it might create online. Or how dare we go against, and this is what moves us into that dynamic portfolio management, how dare we consider going against 2 decades worth of SKU rationalization effort to reuse some of those SKUs we rationalized for the purpose of staying afloat in e-commerce. And I always remember back to my first role on Lysol at Reckitt. I was in charge of SKU rat because they gave SKU rationalization to the lowest on the totem pole. And I got rid of 76 SKUs from the Lysol portfolio. And oh, Chris, great job. Like I should have said, can we save 26 of those for 10 years from now? Because we might need them, right? But again, in a brick and mortar mature world, you wanted maximum ACV and distribution with the fewest possible SKUs because you didn't have that same transparency and immediate conflict. So you wanted fewer, bigger, better, and it made sense on the P&L. And our retailers weren't as really concerned about that outside of, wouldn't it be great to have something unique for just me? But see, now we need something unique for just me, i.e. the retailer, plus e-commerce models require some different price pack architecture, some different nuances, different packaging. And oh, by the way, e-commerce actually opens up all these really cool shopper occasions. And so it's not even just let me change my product so it doesn't get price matched. Let me create a product that's really fit for the speed of e-commerce or the occasion e-commerce or quick commerce provides. So there's so many cool things that we can do if we, and levers we have to pull to protect, but also can pull to propel, if you will, if we're going to use P's here to be alliterative here. So those are kind of the 2 first buckets, that it's strategic promotion with the base portfolio that's everywhere so that you don't cause price matching. And then it's also strategic differentiation of your portfolio to protect against price matching, but then ideally tailor to the retailer and the shopper in a way that you might never been able to do before.
You're also opening up the Pandora's box of assortment because you're bringing back my pet peeve memories from previous lives where senior executives would ask me, why is my pureplay.com share number not the same as the in-store number? And it would just bewilder me once I understood how digital works. And I think the downstream impact of what you're talking about is moving away from category management, which is how the whole industry is built, both on the retail and the CPG side, to item level management. The thing that I would always reflect on is in the physical world, it's category management and share matters because you only have X facings, 4 feet, 8 feet, 12 linear feet, just depends on the outlet. And in the digital shelf, there is no such end zone. And then I would hear hilarious things that even in the digital shelf, it's really an end zone because the warehouse can only have so much space, except most warehouses on the e-commerce side are at 60, 70% capacity and are very future forward. And it's a Pandora's box, man. But Peter, if we go from Capman to item management, what do you think?
I think it will require more radical transformation in the industry. And your mention about warehouse, I just read a Wall Street Journal article yesterday, Shri, that basically all of the warehouses in the New York City area are all being gobbled up by Amazon. Like there's a 1.3% vacancy rate in New York City right now for warehouses. Is that crazy or what? I want to remind our audience that Shri and I are speaking with Molly Schonthal Hamlin from the Digital Shelf Institute and Chris Perry from Firstmovr. Now, Shri, you were kind of teasing some other work that Chris recently did, but I think I can't wait. I got to dig into this because I, as well, like you, thought it was absolutely fascinating. You recently launched some complementary research at Firstmovr back in January through a free ebook, virtual event, and resources you called SHEARED, Shedding Your Coat of Corporate Conformity in the Age of E-Commerce. Come on, Chris, what's this all about?
No worries. I knew this was coming in question 5. I wanted to set it up.
No, so what Molly and I put together, and we've even said many times, like this is like book 1 of like, a Lord of the Rings saga, right? That really needs to continue. That total growth accountability it really came out of, again, all these different questions that really kind of were circling one overall problem, which was how do I change, right? Stuff is happening. It's what I used to do that got me here won't get me there. And so over the holidays, and I always joke, but my wife is like, if 2 days into the holiday, I start getting bored. And so I started getting creative, maybe a little too creative as most people who know me.
Is this before or after the Amazon Little Mermaid track?
Well, after, actually. I do a lot. I try to be like Weird Al, but Weird L with an e-commerce bend, where I rewrite songs, but with e-commerce lyrics. That's a whole nother, we could do a whole nother karaoke session with that. But the idea was TGA, this total growth accountability, was an approach that would help us be successful with 4 key best practices, pillars that we talked about in the face of new realities and disruptions happening to us. But what's interesting is despite that, and we kind of started to tease at it through total growth accountability, what the root cause of this is, because there's usually one horrible thing to blame. But we wanted to put like a pin in that. And then arguably, this is the part where most leaders in e-commerce, no one got formal change management training. Like we're all actually change management leaders, whether we realize it or not, but we didn't get training on this. So, and neither did I, right? But I've been trying to over the last couple of years of actually learning at least the academic frameworks that could help, because either A, I'm helping or we're helping at Firstmovr, or I'm trying to, again, be a therapy shoulder for my peers who are also doing it. But change, just like the word growth, is literally tossed around like at sales meetings, national sales meetings, like if you say it, it will happen. Like change, or let's play that changes song and everyone will walk away and change just occurred. It doesn't happen unless you do it. So the 4 best practices, which are arguably strategies or shifts internally we would take, are actually elements of what is actually an 8-part change management framework that has been applied to many in industry. And we just enhanced it to be a little bit more CPG retail focused. But we tried to name the 8 change levers that you could use so that it was a continuation of this story. So people actually had like something you could assess your organization against, even at a macro level before diving in, so that you could actually go like, well, yeah, I got this strategy, but I realized we didn't get executive commitment. We don't really have that. We have one person on the executive committee who said e-com sounds great. No one else did, right? We don't have metrics in place. We don't have TGA actually embedded into the organization. There were multiple elements. And so it almost gives you a scorecard for change. And the cool thing is you can use it for any change. So when the metaverse, when we're talking about the meta shelf next and whatever, you can still use this framework. But we did use this sheep theme on purpose, to make it fun and make this a little bit less of a white paper feel, but also because, and this is not a knock to anyone out there, but many a times I get off a call with partners in this space, and even the e-com people I feel have gotten stuck in a pasture with all these other sheep. And it's like, and everyone's acting like sheep, like literally the herd mentality is a real thing. And it's almost like they like it. Like I'd almost prefer just managing my life here because I know how to do it versus actually remembering that there was no fence. We aren't sheep, and we could actually leave the pasture and go do something that was actually more effective. And so the cool thing with this is part of storytelling, but create bad behaviors as we did with the sheep theme that no one will want to own up to. So they'll want to do the opposite of, and then they see the problem, which we kind of started naming with TGA. And then we give them an actual path to change. And then arguably we've just made change leaders effective change leaders because they got a rubric for keeping people accountable. So that was kind of our goal with SHEARED was to be like part 2 of TGA.
Do we see, is that a sheep you hear, Peter?
I don't know. I tried counting sheep
Chris,
last night, and I still couldn't get to sleep. It
didn't work. Didn't work. Actually, Chris is telling us not to be like sheep, so no more counting sheep. You got to count metaverse coins, Bitcoins, and NFTs. You know what? I got to ask him, but I'll resist today because I'll behave. So, are you guys going to stop talking to me if I say e-commerce is not cool in that case?
I won't stop talking to you, but I will be sad.
Just kidding, guys. Just kidding. I want to bring back the shared concept to total growth accountability and the greater good of the enterprise, right? So for those reading the book, which again, we've mentioned you can do by going to firstmovr.com pretty easily, how do you connect it back to the greater good for the enterprise and the shared?
Okay, Chris and I actually had this philosophical conversation a couple of weeks ago around what is the connection between the two. And the commonality is language, which is the foundation of change. So I don't know if this is like a 12-step mantra or some other self-help mantra, but sort of the adage is, beware of what you think because thinking becomes words. Beware of what you say because what you say becomes actions. I think where we get hung up in transformation is we don't have a common vocabulary around to describe what needs to be done. So if we say total growth accountability is the practice of considering all aspects of the digital shelf experience in tandem and making investments that drive overall business growth and performance versus separating out strategy by marketing, sales, retailer, online, and offline, we start with the definition that we can organize around. And I think Chris and both of you do a great job in creating words that drive actions, which drive transformations. And this is where the two ideas of giving the total growth accountability framework and SHEARED sort of come together. The language that describes possibility, which turns to action.
And I would, what's kind of cool in the whole scheme of things, and I don't want to make it sound so simple because it's not simple to implement, but it is simple to say, which at least then means that we could all agree to disagree or agree to agree. So if you look at the 8, and you can look at this as a free ebook, and you can get the 8 steps, the 12-step program, the 8 steps for change, right? Of any insert change here, it just happens to be e-com and digital transformation today. when people say, well, what's the most important change? Like if I only could do one, what would I do? I would do what is actually what we could call total growth accountability, but in the SHEARED framework, it's what we call organizational enablement. And that's the same thing. It's if I put the right KPI in everyone's performance review, everyone's ability to move up and forward at a company and either stay at the company, right? And I know that's a loaded thing to say, like, because what is the right KPI? And they might be different, right? Again, so that all of us from wherever we are right now end up at that North Pole when we all walk north towards the same growth. But that's the beauty of it. It would be a little bit different. If we do that right, everything else falls into place. Now, what I mean by that is not that we know exactly everything we're going to have to do in the future, but if you're measured correctly, you're going to then be incented to learn the right things, seek out the right education, seek out the right talent, get the right structure, get the right processes. And if you don't have them, you're going to quickly see that and you're going to have to fix it. So it's, I used a silly example before, but I just said, like, if all of us were asked to be plumbers tomorrow, and I come from a plumbing supply distribution background in my family's company. If we were all asked to be plumbers tomorrow, we'd all say, well, we don't know how to do plumbing. And you would say, you're right. What are you going to go do to figure that out? You're going to watch a lot of YouTube videos. You're going to go become an apprentice to a master plumber. You're going to take apart your toilet to figure it out. Like, I know that sounds silly, but like you're now incented somehow to go do something different that you didn't know how to do. And you had no process, structure, talent, prior knowledge to figure out until you've been incented to go get it. So in a simple, weird analogy, that's how I would apply. If you get the right KPIs, we move everything else towards those best practices.
So the good news is, Chris, I now know who I'm calling after this episode to help me with the dripping bathtub faucet that I have in my upstairs master bedroom, because it's been irritating me for a couple of weeks. So Sri, remind me, I'm going to ping Chris. Okay.
Now, remember, I'm not a plumber. I'm a plumbing supply distributor. So I will get you the parts, but I can't fix it.
You're a decent guy, Peter. I was not going to call him for the bathtub. I was going to call him for other stuff.
So, Molly, what are some of your most important recommendations around actually driving the things we've talked about: digital transformation, e-commerce change, and total growth accountability? Because I think giving those to our audience are going to be quite actionable and tremendously valued by them.
So I come from a digital marketing background. So my most evangelical side comes out when I'm talking about bringing marketing and sales together. I can't even believe that I have to talk about it still. But it's worth mentioning that, in some places, marketing still owns the consumer and brand equity, and sales still owns the quote unquote shopper, and trade partnerships and retail activations. And, those two things the ship has sailed, right? The shopper moments and shopper opportunities are brand forward moments. And marketing moments are transactional moments. And for a variety of reasons, whether or not it's the agencies that they align to, or the fact that those agencies have been rewarded with separate KPIs, or at the departmental level, they have separate budgets and separate KPIs, they are not coming together as fast as they should. So, if you move towards looking at a total sort of share of voice, share of opportunity from both a marketing and sales perspective in the omni combo commerce, e-commerce universe, that is one big hurdle to get over to progress.
In that very spirit, if I ask both of you, I'd love an opinion from each of you, what is the one big thing? So sorry, Chris, I know that's the question everybody asks you, and it is your pet peeve for both of you at this stage, but I'm going to just ask it anyway, because I feel we've heard a lot on what that one thing can be, and I want to get to the bottom of it. For senior executives, if there's one thing they can take, or one big thing they can do, what should that be?
Don't let structure get in the way of strategy. I mean, every time someone says, but we can't do that because, and the reasons are entirely superficial. right? It is technically possible. It is strategically possible. It is your own fault. You build structures to prevent this from happening. Get rid of structure that interferes with strategy.
I love that, because that was the whole reason we were saying, but we can't. We're behind this fake fence we made up. And you're like, it's not there. I just walked through it. Like get out, you sheep. Like you're not a sheep. You're awesome. Go do some cool stuff. So I love that. And I heard somebody the other day said it's about mission, not structure, metrics, not directives, right? So metrics, as I mentioned before, I think really, like, if you literally seeded the right metrics and actually held people accountable to them, which is total growth accountability, things would just happen suddenly in the direction you wanted them to go. But you do have to have a mission. And to Molly's point, that's not that fluffy mission necessarily, but structure. Like, there are a lot of businesses today who are in the business of staying in business, which is not a mission. That's like, I just don't want to fail because I'm going to let a lot of people down. Like, why am I here? Like why are we here? And I understand, yes, to be profitable, to grow, to sustain our employees and our stakeholders and shareholders and consumers. But what's that like real thing that like makes people want to actually come to work beyond obviously stability and advancement and all that stuff, which are important? But I always go back to, like, I love that Coca-Cola concept of like to be an arm's reach of desire, right? That sounds really fluffy, but like I could even take that and say, what would that mean in 2030, right? To be an arm's reach of desire, what will the desire be? Will it be the stuff we have today, or will it be new stuff? And whose desire, right? And so I can actually start breaking that down into like the who, the where, the how. Hey, quick commerce is going to be replaced by in my house commerce. And I'm going to have the soda streams of the world and print on demand beverages, right? Like, and like in-home consignment pantry and all these other things that are going to enable me to be an arm's reach. So I can actually calculate real strategies, initiatives, portfolio implications, pricing, like, channels, quote unquote, numbers. Like I can start getting real around a real mission, but yet I'm part of a fun organization who wants to create delight and fun. And so I do think it's like between the metrics and that mission, structure, process, and everything follows that. And I don't want to say like Molly and I aren't going to assume that that's easy, which is why all of us that are listening today get paid the big bucks, right? But do it. You're not behind a fence. There was never a fence. You made that up. Walk.
Well, one thing that, if you need some language for this, so Chris and I have talked about language, the power of language. We had a really interesting innovation at Mars, a cultural innovation, which is that we were obsessed with what we would call admiration of the problem. We loved to spend hours and hours and hours talking about all of the ways why something wasn't possible or was risky. And so we had a mission to what we would call accelerate through admiration of the problem. Get past admiring all the ways in which it's not feasible and start stringing together the ways in which it is.
So we should detest the problem. I'm just kidding. No, but I love that. That's awesome.
One thing's clear, Peter. When he was referring to the big bucks guy, it was
no, not
definitely
me either.
So
I want to remind our audience that all of our content is available on cpgguys.com. And if you think you or your company has some thought leadership to contribute to our community discussion, drop us an email at contact@cpgguys.com, and maybe you can join us on the podcast. I want to thank Chris and Molly for coming to the show. Hey, Chris, this is your third time. Do you know after 5 times you actually get like the velour smoking jacket like Saturday Night Live? It's really kind of cool. But thank you. Seriously, though, thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us. This is a fundamental part of everyone's learning in the CPG commerce space. So kudos to you for creating this community and this vocabulary.
Thank you. And honestly, this is where, while we can all have different platforms and brands that help bring everyone together, we should really like all the rings come together to form Captain Planet together. If we can bring all of our brands.
One more movie analogy and you're out, Perry. Have you started counting that?
If you can work in Animal House or Stripes, or there are a couple of Caddyshack, then you had me at hello. But anyhow, hey Shri, what'd you think today? This was a good one, right? We really got down to the operational tactics of.
Hey man, anytime there's a new acronym born, TGA, that I'm actually going to use starting Monday morning, we refer to Animal House. We have movie analogies, and I remember Molly saying Captain Obvious. How can this episode not be a fun one, man? But jokes apart, it kind of takes on, I would say, transformation that's long overdue in the CPG industry. Kind of calls back to, this is the moment, the bus is leaving, either you're on or off. Decide which one you're on and don't point fingers later on. That's as easy as it gets.
Thanks for that.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Molly.
Thanks for that, Shri. And to our audience, we really appreciate you joining us today and look forward to speaking with you on the next episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Goodbye. The content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from CPG Guys LLC or the individual author, hosts, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by CPG Guys LLC. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. The views expressed by CPG Guys LLC do not represent the views of their employers or the entity they represent. CPG Guys LLC expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we present in this podcast.